Hello Internet, welcome back to Tromsø Twilight, the channel where I, Vincent, talk to you, the abyss, about books, movies, music I enjoy, find interesting, or a combination of the two. I'd like to talk to you about an album that I think is relatively obscure. I mean, it's not totally obscure, but I certainly have never heard of it. On all of these 1960s or 69 album lists that you hear about, I've never heard it mentioned. And I picked it up recently at a bookshop in Oslo, Tronsmo, my favorite bookshop in Oslo. They had a load of vinyl. It was like $1 for a record, and I picked up 5 records. This was one of them. I played it, and it kind of blew my mind. So the album is called The Genuine Imitation Life Gazette by the Four Seasons. Now, the Four Seasons I'm not hugely familiar with. They were a vocal group in the 60s, and then later they were more famous for their lead vocalist, Frankie Valli, and they became called Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. And most of their work is kind of close harmony, vocal group ballads and love songs. Quite saccharine, quite radio friendly, very much of the time. In 1969, one of the principal songwriters in the group, Bob Gaudio, teamed up with a guy called Jake Holmes, who is also famous for having written Dazed and Confused, the Led Zeppelin song, to create a psychedelic record that would be more in tune with the political and cultural period of 1969. So you get this album, the Genuine Imitation Life Gazette, which looks like a newspaper, and in which they include the lyrics within this newspaper inlay, but at the same time include a lot of fictive news stories with references to bands of the time and mildly satirical anti-police or pro-marijuana newspaper articles. There's also a direct reference to the Beatles here. You can see there's a lyric from one of the songs, "People worship crosses with fingers crossed," and you've got the Beatles in India with one of their gurus, and what looks like Ringo has his fingers crossed behind his back. Also interesting, before you even put the record on, is that you turn the page again and it has this full color 4-page inlay with kind of, again, little weird references, some of the lyrics to some of the songs worked in, some photography that almost like satirical pop art with the flag on images of hippies, and then some kind of underground comic strips that were popular with hippies at the time. On the back, you've got these kind of joking references to other musicians again, Elvis Presley, chocolate-covered Beatles. There's a news story about the turtles going around the moon. So everything's very much situating them, not so much in this kind of sweet love song, saccharine space anymore, but more like directly into the pop culture of the period. The music on the album is such a strange and beautiful mix. Some of it sounds like it's influenced by the Beatles or even by the Kinks. It has this 60s pop sound to it, but it's also very playful in terms of production. They have a lot of slapback delay on the drums. The songs move between different sequences, different sections. They'll go from being a kind of almost like a quite twee pop track over into something more like a kind of chamber orchestra. Like, the closest thing you could compare it to is when the Beach Boys became more experimental, mixed with Frank Zappa when he was doing parodies of the type of music that the Four Seasons normally made. And there seems to be a reference to the Mothers of Invention actually in the sleeve of the album. The first track stages the racial tension of the period with references to kind of peasant uprisings in Europe, and the king is dead, long live the king. But it also talks about slaves, freed slaves standing around the gate. It talks about a young boy becoming a man, and it seems like Frankie Valli is actually singing from the perspective of a black man who is saying, "You need to use my real name. You can't call me boy." Which is a wild thing for a white singer to be doing in the late 60s. There are some softer, certainly less satirical songs on the album, like a track called Idaho, but even the love songs seem to be about heartbreak or disillusionment, a relationship ending. The track Genuine Imitation Life is my favourite track on the album and probably one of my favourite tracks that I've heard this year. from the production to the writing of these extremely kind of cynical, melancholic lyrics about the world as it is in the 60s, this description of kind of society collapsing under capitalism, selfishness, it sounds like it could have been written in the Reagan era. Then there are touches of kind of cultural conservatism that might even remind you of Frank Zappa at his most satirical. There's a track called Saturday's Father, which is just about a guy who only sees his children once a week, and the song is kind of about him picking his kids up on Father's Day and delivering them home again. And it is a sad and somewhat sympathetic song, but it also seems to be kind of like critical of a broken home. Later in the album, there's a song that's even more directly from the first person perspective of a parent wondering about their child, wondering what the child will become, but also wondering, how many people will you be taken advantage of by, and how many lies will you believe in your life, and will I really be able to protect you, and what will it be like when you leave my sphere of influence? And then the final song, Soul of a Woman, is just really wild. Like it is definitely touched by the gender politics of the time. It's about a baby girl growing up to become a young woman who kind of learns to act like a woman and then falls in love and is married to a man. But then it ends with her dying, and it kind of uses the same images from the verse about her birth. So the album kind of leaves you on this fast track view of a life kind of starting, blooming, and then the demise. Definitely generates a degree of existential anxiety. The Four Seasons were four Italian American guys from New Jersey. You see it references New Jersey on the cover here. There's also references to Waterland in the lyrics. But there is a song about Manhattan Island, about New York. I think it's called Wall Street Greenwich Village Day or something similar. It's basically a description first of Greenwich Village and the people there, and then of Wall Street and the people there. And I think it's a very elegant illustration of the cultural and class and capital divide within this city, of the young people who are kind of interested in cultural rebellion and aesthetic concerns, and then the people of Wall Street who maybe are the same age but who have a very different attitude to how to run the country. And I think it kind of reflects a split in society that's even more noticeable now with, the tech bros, with destruction of poetry and aesthetics within culture, this kind of continual drive to turn everything into tech and money and capitalism. So I kind of find this album super interesting to discover at this point in 2026. If you never heard this album before, maybe like me, you'll find it to be a refreshing and interesting discovery. And I would love to hear from you if you give it a listen and let me know what you think about it, what you make of it. Even if you just listen for the production and the close vocal harmonies, I think you'll find something to enjoy. If you know this album or you know some of the context around it, I'd be even more interested to hear from you. And I hope either way that you maybe found this description of my personal little discovery of this record vaguely interesting. Thanks for your time, and I'll see you again soon.